Just one more little fact about the word of wisdom that I thought was interesting. When I was reading that Revelations in Context that I found on the Gospel Library app, I just realized I thought it was kind of interesting that it doesn't include the context of the 1920s. It fails to mention that any time during the 1900s, there was a lot of talk and debate about prohibition. And it fails to mention that a lot of the church leaders are actually pretty politically active in trying to promote what they thought was right. This was an interesting article I found that was written by a BYU scholar, and it includes a lot of references of quotes and things that were actually going on in the early 1900s, specifically between Heber J. Grant and Joseph F. Smith and their support of prohibition. It goes into some history of the early church, how many members, used coffee and tea, liquor, This part up here in this first paragraph, it even mentions that some church leaders even thought that eating pork was a more serious crime than drinking tea or coffee. And I found this article printed in the 1868 Deseret News. It was a summary of George Q. Cannon's conference address, where he says that we plainly know that coffee, tea, chocolate, and cocoa are all not good for man. And then again, up here he says, we must not permit them to drink liquor or hot drinks or hot soups or use tobacco. So they were even banning hot chocolate and soup at some point. Which just brings me back to this article I was talking about, the Revelations in Context. It really doesn't give any context to any of this. They're really just trying to support the narrative that it was just an inspired revelation, but fail to mention that Heber J. Grant was a big supporter of prohibition. So as soon as he became the president of the church, he updated the handbooks so that in order to get a temple recommend, you had to adhere to the word of wisdom. So lo and behold, in 1920, when prohibition became law, Heber J. Grant went right ahead and supported the government. He aligned the church's doctrine with what the government was telling everybody to do, and which was in line with his own political beliefs. I don't know, that kind of reminds me of something else that happened recently, but I don't know, I can't really quite think of it. But I'm just pointing this out because anybody who listens to the narrative of the church saying that in 1920 Heber J. Grant was inspired or received the revelation to make the word of wisdom a commandment, you need to know that that's entirely false, because there's no revelation or any document saying that this was received from God. It was just his political beliefs.